Hi Science 7, welcome to our very last unit on planet Earth. We have 10 exciting topics to look at, and our first one is on minerals. I want to let you know that if you'd like to see the links, make sure that you check out the PowerPoints. If you're having trouble with PowerPoints covering the diagrams, covering some of the text, as you're making notes, you might want to check out the PDF version. So I have included both of those in your material under classwork for topic 1, 2, and 3. So minerals are different than rocks because rocks may have some materials that are like naturally occurring elements, but also some inorganic materials in there, so they're a kind of a mixture. Whereas the word mineral means that it is a pure substance, and it's either an element that you would see on the periodic table, or it would be a compound, which is two or more of those elements. And there are over 3,000 known minerals, and they are made up of either an element or a compound. So I just put this periodic table insert in here that we would have seen in the classroom, and I would be pointing out that the some of the elements that you may be familiar with are things like the metals like zinc or nickel, zinc, copper, nickel, maybe silver, and gold. You would recognize some of these as elements, and just know that some minerals are purely these elements or combinations of these elements. So quartz, for example, is made up of silicon and oxygen, and looking at the periodic table, silicon, I'll just use a different color, is right here, and oxygen is right here. So those are the two elements that make up quartz. Sulfur, copper, gold, diamond, those are made up of only one element, and diamond, for example, is made up of carbon, which is number 6 on the periodic table. Okay, here's some examples of some minerals, and they're always pretty cool to look at. The three that are most found in the Earth's crust are quartz, feldspar, and mica. Those are the three minerals. And the Earth's crust, of course, is the very thin outermost layer that is indicated here and here. It's about over 6,000 kilometers deep, but they consider it thin when you look at how many kilometers there are in total before you hit the center of the Earth. So there are 20 elements that are found in the human body coming from minerals. Iron transports oxygen, it's part of our red blood cells, and calcium is something that is really important for moving muscles and having your nerves conduct impulses around your body, and also for blood clotting. Calcium has a big job in many things, including keeping your bones and teeth really strong. And calcite and dolomite, those are helpful to plants for their water control. So we're going to look at, in this topic, 6 tests that are done to identify minerals. The first one being the type of crystal. And crystals have certain straight edges, flat faces, and regular angles. And so here's some of the crystals that are found. Halite has cubic crystals, and wolfenite tetragon. Corundum has hexagonal, topaz, orthorhombic shape, monoclinic in gypsum, and triclinic in albite. Now, these are not crystal shapes that you have to memorize. Just know that there are different shapes that help to identify the mineral. And the shape of the crystal will determine the shape of that entire mineral. The second one, the Mohs hardness scale, which is developed by Friedrich Mohs, gives a hardness scale of 1, which is really soft, to 10 being the very hardest, like diamond is the hardest. So we use certain objects to scratch the sample, and if scratches it, for example, copper having a hardness, like a copper penny having a hardness of 3.2, 3.5, copper then would be able to scratch talc and gypsum and calcite, but it would not be able to scratch anything further. So using these common objects would be how we could do an activity on this. By, for example, your fingernail, it could scratch gypsum. It could scratch gypsum and talc, but a fingernail couldn't scratch anything further than that. So this is a great way to use these objects to scratch your sample and help determine the hardness, and that way you can look at a chart of data and determine what element or what mineral you had. The luster is how shiny something is, and if it's really shiny, they give it say it's a metallic luster. If it's dull, we say it's a non-metallic luster. So these shiny ones, for example, like metals and gold and silver, would be metallic, and if they're not metals, they're probably non-metallic. Color is a very easy one to use, but it's a little tricky because there may be minerals who have the same color. For example, this is 20 different pictures of corundum. So that is a tricky one. Corundum, here's 3 close-ups. It can be white if it's pure, but if it's mixed with something, with titanium, it turns blue. With chromium, it turns red. So color is not the only test that we can use for accurately identifying a mineral. The streak test is when you rub it against a unglazed porcelain tile, and the mark that appears is considered the streak test. And interestingly, porcelain tile is a 7 for hardness, so anything that is harder than number 7 will just have to be crushed into powder to take a look at it, because it can only work for objects under 7 of hardness. Next test is the way it breaks, and that's called cleavage and fracture. So if it has a smooth, flat surface, it's considered cleavage, like mica over here that kind of breaks off into sheets. And fracture is like the bottom of this crystal that has these rough surfaces. You see crystals of quartz at the top, and you see how it's fractured and has this uneven part at the bottom in this diagram or picture. And number 7, which is the last one, is transparency. And so you hold it up to the light. If it's transparent, that means light can come right through it. And you can see like your hand on the other side of it, so you can actually see through it if it's transparent. If it's translucent, you can see some light is shining through, but you can't see clearly through it. And opaque means you cannot see through it at all. So that is, transparency is just one other test. That wraps up our testing for determining types of minerals. When you see your note package, you can see that there will be a list of data in the lab called the mineral identification chart, and it gives you the data of what the color streak hardness breakage pattern is for a whole bunch of minerals. And if you were to have those in front of you, you could do these 7 tests with them and identify which minerals they were. Check out all the videos that are listed in here. If you check out the PowerPoint version, you can click and see the videos.